There is a kind of pain that does not knock before entering. It waits until you are deeply asleep, until the room is quiet, until your body is completely relaxed. And then, without warning, your calf suddenly locks. Your foot pulls downward. Your toes begin curling on their own. And within seconds, you are wide awake, fighting a pain so intense that the only thing you can think about is making it stop. You sit up, you grab your leg, you try to stretch. Sometimes you jump out of bed and start walking across the room, hoping the muscle will finally release. But for those few agonizing moments, it can feel as though your own leg is no longer listening to you. And perhaps the most frustrating part is that by morning, everything seems normal again. So you tell yourself it was probably dehydration. Maybe you didn't drink enough water. Maybe you need a banana. Maybe you need more magnesium. And then, a few nights later, it happens again. The same sudden attack. The same muscle turning hard and tight. The same desperate attempt to stretch the pain away. And you begin asking a much more important question. Why does this keep happening? Because if nighttime leg cramps were always caused by one simple thing, they should be easy to fix. Drink some water. Take one supplement. Stretch before bed. Problem solved. But that is not what many people experience. Some people drink plenty of water and still wake up with cramps. Some take magnesium and notice little change. Others stretch every night, exercise regularly, and still find themselves standing beside the bed at 3 in the morning, waiting for the pain to let go. That is because a leg cramp is not always the beginning of the problem. Sometimes it is the final warning, the last event in a chain of things that may have been happening inside your body long before you went to sleep. And this is the part most people never think about. The cramp that wakes you up in the middle of the night may have actually begun during your morning, with something you drank, something you ate, a long period of sitting, a demanding workout, hours of walking or standing, a medication, a change in your sleep position, or a gradual shift in the balance your nerves and muscles depend on to work properly. Because your muscles do not simply move on their own. Every contraction begins with a signal. Your nervous system communicates with your muscles every second of the day. When the signal arrives, the muscle contracts. When the signal settles, the muscle relaxes. And for your muscles to perform this process smoothly, your body depends on a carefully balanced environment. Fluids, minerals, energy, nerve signals, blood flow, and healthy muscle function. When one or more of these factors is disturbed, a muscle may become more vulnerable to cramping. And that is why the same advice does not work for everyone. One person may be affected by fluid loss. Another may have overworked or fatigued muscles. Someone else may be dealing with changes in electrolyte balance. And for another person, a medication or an underlying health problem may be playing a role. This is especially important after the age of 50, because as the years pass, your body does not always respond the way it did at 25. Muscles may recover more slowly. You may spend longer periods sitting. You may be taking medications you did not need earlier in life. Your activity level may have changed. And even small changes in strength, flexibility, nerve function, or hydration can become more noticeable. That does not mean leg cramps are simply something you have to accept as part of getting older. It means you may need to look more carefully at the pattern. And patterns can reveal a lot. Think about when your cramps usually happen. Is it always after a very active day? Do they happen more often after sitting for hours? Do they appear when you have been sweating more than usual? Do they become worse after alcohol or excessive caffeine? Did they begin after you started a new medication? Do they happen when your feet remain pointed downward while you sleep? These details may seem small, but your body often repeats the same story before it repeats the same symptom. And there is one pattern that surprises many people: the way your foot is positioned in bed. When you sleep, your feet may naturally point downward for long periods. This can leave the calf muscle in a shortened position. Then, perhaps while turning in bed, you suddenly stretch. Your toes move upward, the calf lengthens quickly, and suddenly the cramp strikes. That is why some people feel perfectly fine all day but develop a severe cramp only after getting into bed. The problem is not necessarily that their muscles suddenly became weak at midnight. The conditions for the cramp may simply have been building throughout the day, and sleep created the final trigger. But there is another reason these cramps can become so confusing. Many people focus on only one mineral, magnesium, and magnesium is certainly involved in normal nerve and muscle function. But the body does not work through one nutrient in isolation. muscles and nerves depend on a wider balance. That includes hydration and several important electrolytes. This is why randomly increasing one supplement may not always solve the problem. And in some cases, taking large amounts without medical guidance can be unsafe, particularly for people with kidney problems or certain medical conditions. So the goal should not be to guess. The goal is to understand the clues. Because the difference between an occasional cramp and a cramp that keeps destroying your sleep may be hiding in something you do every single day. Something so ordinary that you may never connect it to your legs. And that is where this becomes truly interesting. Because once you start looking beyond the cramp itself, you begin to see why so many common solutions fail. The real question is no longer simply, what stops a cramp? The real question is, what is quietly making your body more likely to have one?
And this is where the story changes. Because if you keep treating every nighttime leg cramp as a simple muscle problem, you may keep chasing the wrong solution. The muscle is where you feel the pain, but it may not be where the problem began. Think about what happens before a cramp. Your muscle is normally receiving a constant stream of messages from the nervous system. It is being told when to contract, when to release, and how strongly to respond. For that system to work smoothly, your body depends on the right balance of fluids, minerals, energy, and healthy nerve function. When that balance is disturbed, the muscle can become far more likely to tighten suddenly. And this explains something that frustrates millions of people. You can drink plenty of water and still get cramps. You can eat bananas and still get cramps. You can stretch every night and still wake up with your calf locked like a piece of stone. Because hydration is important, but hydration alone is not the whole story. Magnesium is important, but magnesium alone is not the whole story either. Your muscles do not work with one mineral. They work within an entire system. Magnesium, potassium, calcium, sodium, fluid balance, nerve signals, and muscle fatigue can all influence how easily a muscle contracts and relaxes. And when you focus on only one piece of that system, you can miss the reason your cramps keep returning. This is why one person may say, "Magnesium completely changed my life," while another says, "I took it for weeks and nothing happened." Both experiences can be real, because they may not have the same trigger. For one person, the problem may be linked to an inadequate intake of magnesium. For another, it may be dehydration after sweating heavily. For someone else, it may be an overworked calf muscle that has not recovered properly. And sometimes the trigger is something people rarely think to check at all. A medication. Certain medicines can affect fluid or electrolyte balance, and in some people, that may contribute to cramping. This is why timing matters. If your cramps began after starting a new medication or changing a dose, do not simply ignore it, and do not stop your medication on your own. Speak with your doctor or pharmacist and ask whether it could be relevant. But there is another trigger that can be sitting right in your bedroom every night: your sleeping position. Many people sleep with their toes naturally pointing downward. For hours, the calf remains in a shortened position. Everything feels fine. Then, somewhere in the middle of the night, you stretch. Without even waking up, your toes suddenly move upward. The calf muscle is pulled into a rapid lengthening movement. And then it happens. The muscle locks. The pain explodes through the back of your leg. And suddenly, you are sitting on the edge of the bed, wondering why your body would do this to you again. For some people, that simple movement is the final trigger. Not the beginning of the problem, the final trigger. And that distinction matters, because the conditions may have been building for hours. Perhaps you spent the entire day sitting, and your calves became stiff. Perhaps you walked much farther than usual. Perhaps you worked in the heat, and lost more fluid than you realized. Perhaps you drank several cups of coffee, but did not replace enough fluid. Perhaps your muscles were already fatigued when you went to bed. Then sleep created the perfect moment for everything to come together. That is why the best way to deal with recurring cramps is not to panic when they happen. It is to become a detective before they happen. For the next few days, notice the pattern. What did you do on the days when the cramps were worse? How active were you? Did you sweat more? Did you spend hours sitting? Did you change your exercise routine? Did you drink more caffeine or alcohol than usual? Did the cramp appear after you stretched your legs in bed? These details may sound ordinary, but ordinary habits can create extraordinary patterns inside the body. And once you see the pattern, you stop guessing. Now, if you frequently wake up with cramps, there are a few sensible steps you can take. Stay adequately hydrated throughout the day instead of waiting until bedtime to drink large amounts of water. If your calves feel tight, use gentle stretching and regular movement to reduce stiffness. Avoid forcing an aggressive stretch into a muscle that is already painful. After an unusually active day, give your legs a chance to recover, and rather than randomly taking larger and larger doses of supplements, look at the whole picture. If you suspect a nutritional issue, discuss it with a qualified healthcare professional, especially if you have kidney disease, take regular medication, or have other health conditions, and never ignore symptoms that do not feel like an ordinary cramp. Persistent pain, swelling, redness, warmth, weakness, numbness, or a sudden major change in your symptoms deserves medical attention. But for the ordinary nighttime cramp that keeps stealing your sleep, remember this: your body is rarely as random as it seems. The cramp may happen suddenly, but the conditions behind it often develop slowly, hour by hour, habit by habit, day by day, and perhaps that is the most important lesson of all. Do not just ask, "How do I make this cramp stop?" Ask, "What happened before it started?" Because somewhere between your morning routine, your activity, your hydration, your muscle fatigue, your medications, and the way you sleep, your body may already be leaving clues. And once you start paying attention to those clues, you may finally understand why your legs keep waking you up at night. The pain may begin in seconds, but the reason behind it is often a story that started long before you closed your eyes.